Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The 2020 season opener of 1855 MASTERCLASS, presented by Durham Region Economic Development, will begin shortly.
So, good evening. Oh, no. Good evening. That's much better. My name's John Henry, and I'm the chair of the region of Durham, and I'm so proud to be here tonight and be part of the presenting sponsors with our economic development team. But evenings like this don't happen without a lot of work. How about giving everyone that put the night together a big round of applause? You know, it's great to be on stage, and when you're on stage and the lights are that bright, your notes don't really make any sense, so I will just wing it. I'm excited to be here. There is an energy in the region of Durham that is second to none, and it is our time. It truly is. And you can see it by the businesses and industry that are moving out here, but in order to make all things work, you need great leaders. Not political leaders, you need great leaders in the business world. So today, it is my absolute pleasure, and give him a big round of applause. We'll have Mr. Jason Atkinson come up to the stage, please.
How's everyone tonight? Good? Yeah. All right. So it's pretty fun for me to be up here. Dan Martell is back in Whitby, which is, I think, surprising for Dan to come back to Whitby. But I had Dan come here, I don't know, 2 years ago. All I have is a picture on my phone. Is the IFTech guys here? Yeah, somewhere. So if you don't know what they do this like immersive bodysuit, and of course we convinced Dan he should put it on and turn it up pretty high, and it was one of the greatest pictures of watching Dan go through pain. But Dan was here, a couple years ago. I told him I started to invest in startups, and my strategy in business has always been to work really, really hard. Which isn't always the best strategy in business. Dan has really good strategies in business, which I'm sure hopefully he'll talk a little bit about. But Dan's been doing coaching for, I don't know, a bunch of years. I met Dan maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Over that time, we've become pretty good friends. We've traveled overseas a few times. He's one of the guys that Dan loves to live life to the fullest. So I try to convince everybody to come to Haiti with Brendan and myself, and we love Haiti, and most people I ask are like, they're like, Haiti? No. I'm like, Dan, you want to come to Haiti? He's like, I'm going to come to Haiti. I'm going to bring my 2 little kids and my wife, and so we had a great vacation in Haiti. And the best part of Haiti was our friend was trying to pilot a new app, and it was all about helping people in the slums save money, which is a challenge in Haiti. So, of course, most people don't go to the slums of Haiti, but Dan made it a requirement that we actually walked around the slums of Haiti to see how these things happen. And it's the same as with like IFTech. Like Dan is fully immersive in everything he does. He's an amazing friend of mine. I had this whole script that I was sent earlier today that he told me I'm allowed to read. I won't though. That talks about like angel investor of the year and all his companies invested in and how he's built multiple multiple companies. But at the end of the day, Dan's an amazing guy, and he's here to help, give you guys knowledge and tidbits of wisdom. So I'm going to call up my really good friend, Dan Martell, to the stage.
All right, just going to see if my Madonna mic is on. You got me up there, Alex? We're good? All right, audio's good. Wow, this is fun. I'm so glad Jason didn't read the original bio thing. I was like, who wrote that? He's like, your team sent it to me. I was like, somebody's getting fired. This thing is ridiculous. And it is actually quite surprising that I'm back in Whitby, considering last time I almost got electrocuted to death. And when he says I put it on, he's like, take your shirt off. I mean, I just finished giving a talk. There's a bunch of people in the room. I take my shirt off. I'm strap it on. They like put these electrodes on me. And they're like, what level do you want to go? And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, how many levels do you have? He's like, well, we got like 10. I said, let's start at 2. You got to see, it literally feels like somebody's kicking you in the back. Like you're watching me, it's like, whoa, is somebody there? It's like, holy shit, there's nothing there. And then it's like, because it's literally 16 electrodes. That's what they are. If you've ever seen like a Compex machine at the gym that makes your muscle twitch, imagine 16 of those strapped to your body with some, tech nerd at a laptop going like, 2, enter. He could accidentally hit 9. And he's like, I could have dropped you to the floor. And I'm like, no doubt. So anyways, I obviously trust Jason. Jason and Brenda are dear friends of Renee and I's. And, what's special for me in Whitby and why I'm committed to giving you guys 100% is I come and grew up from a town of a similar size, Moncton, New Brunswick, East Coast. I'm a big fan of fighting for the underdog. And I know that when people come and they speak, it's really easy for them to get up here and do a thing called success theater. So if you guys are okay with that, I'm not going to do any of that. I'd rather share with you literally some of the life lessons. So I've got 5 key lessons that have really guided my life. And I'm going to share kind of my personal stories and my journey for 4 of those. And I'm going to end with sharing one of the best entrepreneurial stories I've ever had the privilege of experiencing and seeing myself, one of the best entrepreneurs ever. And to kick it off, I just want to share this belief that I heard from my buddy Jason Atkins, and he says this all the time, Jason Gaynard, the other Jason. They're intertwined in my life. And his saying in life, his philosophy is no pressure, no diamonds. And I just think it's just such a beautiful metaphor when you think of kind of what does it mean to create success or to overcome adversity and almost get to a point where you don't shy from it, you actually lean into it and you kind of accept it as it's part of the process. And I know for my personal experience has kind of been my truth. At a young age, I grew up second oldest of 4. My mom was an alcoholic. My dad was in sales, always traveling, didn't see him very often. At 11, I got diagnosed with ADHD. So at a young age, I felt like I was broken. There was something wrong with me. Every morning I had to take a pill to kind of make me normal. And by the time I was 12, 13, I was acting out at home, and my parents had to call the police to take me away and put me in foster care at a quite young age. And I pretty much grew up with people twice my age teaching me stuff I should have never been learning, and ended up getting into drugs when I was about 13, 14, and life just kind of spiraled out of control. To a point where I found myself outside of Sussex, New Brunswick, high and drunk, driving in a stolen vehicle with a handgun in a bag sitting next to me because I'd already been to jail once prior to that moment. And I thought to myself, if I get pulled over or caught by the police, I'm going to pull the gun and let them do their job. And I take the exit, routine roadblocks set up. I pull over, police ask me driver's license and registration. Obviously, it was a stolen car. I told him I didn't have my registration. It was my mom's car. And as soon as he asked me to pull over to the side, I gunned it, and I just took off. And I probably watched way too many cops and robber chase movies because I thought I could get away. And at one point, I was in this neighborhood, and the police, I could hear them, but they were quite far behind me. I saw an open garage door, and I came around the corner, and I thought I could kind of hide out in there, and I came around into the driveway carrying way too much speed and just smashed into the side of the house. And as soon as that happened, I started going for the gun, looking for it, and trying to find the bag. And I kept pulling on the handgun in the bag because the police at that point I could hear them, cars open, they ran up to the car. And before I knew it, the door opened. They grabbed me, my feet didn't even touch the ground. They dragged me across the lawn and threw me in the back of the cop car And I woke up sober the next morning in a jail cell, wondering what my life was going to look like. And I just remember pleading to somebody, anybody that was listening at that point, that if they just helped me get through that moment, I would do whatever I could in my life to just be a good person. I wasn't even thinking about giving back or anything like that. I just, thought I've learned my lesson. And unfortunately, due to the severity of my crimes, the judge wanted to make an example of me, and he sentenced me to 11 months in an adult facility in St. John, New Brunswick. And there was this cell unit, 2 cell blocks. It was kind of like what you see in a movie with 2 tiers and the cells, an adolescent area in this jail. And I literally just tried to do my homework and heads down and not interact with the rest of the inmates and just try to stay out of everything. And then 2 months in, I having breakfast. Some kid says something, grabs the coffee's empty. His name's Kurt. I don't know if you guys grew up with any of these kids or seen these teenagers today that have an 8-pack. I was like, how is this guy built like a muscle? I don't look like this. And he was 14. Anyways, Kurt grabs the coffee, it's empty. He's like, who the F drank all the coffee? Somebody points at me, and I'm like, this is not gonna end good. And next thing you know, Kurt swings over and he calls me a goof, and then fight breaks out, fights going off. The guards, rush into the cell block, grab both of us, and throw us in the hole, solitary confinement. I spent 3 days in a concrete room with nothing but essentially a stainless steel toilet and a sink attached 1 unit, no mattress, no blankets, in my underwear for 3 days. And they don't tell you how long you're there for. It's probably the worst thing you could ever do to a human being. And on the 3rd day, there was a guard there, Brian, and Brian was kind of like one of those guards, and maybe some of you have had people like this in your life growing up, that he was fair. He didn't engage in any of the politics. If you did what you were doing, he would look the other way if you wanted to have 2 desserts. He's always like the guard that people actually respected, which is a very rare thing in prison. And he opens the door, and he just looks at me totally disappointed, and he says, come with me, and I'm walking with him. And we're heading back to the cell block. And as we're walking by the door that goes into the cell block, we walk past it. I'd never been past there because we weren't allowed there. And the next door was into the guard unit. And he opens the door, and he asked me to come in and sit in the corner. And I'd never been in there. It was, a one-way mirror that kind of overlooks the 2 cell blocks. And I sit down in the corner. And, he's obviously pretty disappointed with me. And he just says, what are you doing here, Dan? I said, well, I got in a fight with Kurt. They threw me in the hole. And he goes, not that. He goes, what are you doing here in jail? And I was like, well, high-speed chase, drugs. And he goes, Dan, if you've never heard this before, I want to tell you something. But you don't belong here. And he goes, I've seen so many kids come and go through this place. And I watch you, and I see you interact, and I see you try to do the right thing. And I want you to know that you don't belong in this place. And at 17, maybe somebody said it to me in the past and I just wasn't willing to hear it, but at 17, there was something about what Brian said about the fact that he believed in me when I definitely didn't believe in myself. My self-esteem was 0. That something shifted, that I thought, if he's obviously seen a lot of kids like myself come through this program, and if he's saying this, there's no reason for him to say it. There's a reason why he's sharing this with me. And it was like, at that point, I just decided, well, if Brian sees this, it must be true. I'm going to do as much as I can to honor that and kind of play into it. And 2 months later, I got lucky enough to get released to a rehab center. I applied for parole, and they released me conditionally to go finish up my sentence at this therapeutic center called Portage outside of, it's in this place called Cassidy Lake. I don't know if you've ever seen these TV shows with in the woods, these beautiful lodges. It literally is that. I mean, it was way too nice and the coolest place in the world, and then just a bunch of pretty troublemaker type kids. I mean, I've realized after the fact why they built it in the middle of nowhere is because if you decided to run away, everybody that lived out, it was like 3 hours from civilization. So you pretty much were like, screw you, I'm done with this shit. And then you like leave down this dirt driveway and start hitchhiking. And literally you could almost like calculate it to the 4 hour, like 4 hours from now, that person's coming back. No, and the worst part is when it started pouring or it's in the middle of the winter, you're like, oh yeah, okay, good luck on that front. Nobody picked you up. You'd be hitchhiking and all the locals knew if they saw a teenager hitchhiking, you came from Portage. So, and I found myself many times, I did 11 months therapy in this place, many times down that driveway trying to leave. And it was just a beautiful place because all of the other the place was ran by the residents. All the other staff were actually ex-drug addicts that had been trained and got clean, and they were there to help support our program. And over an 11-month program, I learned how to rebuild my self-esteem. I understood where my anger issues came from. I understood what made me tick. I got to connect with people on a level I didn't even know was possible, other human beings. And I ended up getting my credits for high school and just really shifting my whole life, rebuilding the relationship with my family and building that trust that had obviously been lost. And it was at the end of that program that I was helping Rick, the maintenance guy, clean out this cabin because it was an old church camp that they converted, but they only used certain cabins. And there was this cabin nobody had ever been in. And he asked me to help him kind of go through it and pick heavy things up and move them around because I was a big kid for my age. And in one of the rooms that was locked, he gave me the key and I opened it up. There was an old 486 computer and a yellow book on Java programming sitting next to it. And I'd at that point never touched a computer, never seen computer code. I always thought it was hieroglyphics and ones and zeros and hexadecimal numbers. And I opened up this book, and if you've ever seen JavaScript, it read like English. And, I was like reading it, and I was like, if this, then that. And I was like, this is interesting. And I literally just start chapter 1, follow the instructions, boot up the computer, open up the terminal, type in all the stuff. And I got this computer to say, hello world. And this is how naive, like this is a dumb, I was like, oh my gosh, I am the Doogie Howser of computers. Some of you guys will get that reference. The younger ones will have no clue because that's how old I'm getting. And unfortunately, it turned out that is not the case. I am not some like savant programmer. I'm actually a horrible programmer, but I didn't know that at the time. And for some reason, it sparked something inside of me because I was like, I follow this and it did this. I wonder what else could do. And I ended up leaning into that. And what happened for me is when I got out, I ended up in high school that had a computer programming course, and I took more courses, and I literally just self-taught software. And as Jason mentioned, I've been just super fortunate and lucky. Over the last 20 years, I've built 5 technology companies, multi-million-dollar companies. I've raised venture capital twice, invested in 40-plus SaaS companies, 4 of them billion-dollar companies. Got to spend a week with Richard Branson. Mark Cuban was an investor in my last company. And I don't share any of this stuff to brag. I want to share to give you guys context for like where you're at and where I was at from Moncton, New Brunswick as a 17-year-old kid. And the big thing I took away from that lesson was, for me, entrepreneurship became the ultimate personal development program. Like when people said, like, what did you figure out? Because a lot of kids don't make it after they get out. They relapse. There's recidivism rates and all these things. And I just realized that I grabbed onto this building companies thing. My dad growing up always said, he goes, Dan, if you could just find something you're passionate about that isn't illegal, I think you'd actually do pretty well. Right? And that was the thing for me. I just got passionate. I've always been entrepreneurial. Just unfortunately, the law didn't agree with my business acumen at the time, and I learned a different approach. And then the other thing is software became an addiction for me, and a positive one, where it kind of replaced that aspect of my life. And when I think of no pressure, no diamonds, it's just the willingness to be okay with the process, that it's going to be hard and not fight it, not be angry. But think about going to the gym. The metaphor I want to leave you with is when you go to the gym, you knowingly put yourself in a position to stretch your muscles to grow, right? You proactively do it. It's going to hurt. You know it's going to hurt. You still show up to go to the gym. And the reason we do that is because if we do that consistently over time, we get stronger. And it's so funny how in life, I don't know if you've ever done this, but like when things hurt, you pull back from it. And for me, what I've gotten really good at that I continue to try to lean into is just when things hurt, I feel like I'm on the right path, because through that pressure, hopefully at the end of it, we'll get some diamonds. So that's the first belief. The second one is, and I apologize for the parents, I'm a parent of 2 little boys, don't listen to your parents. I say this with love, and I get it. I remember when I used to share this idea with my friends before I had kids, and I was like, I know I'm going to be the same way with my kids. And here's the thing is, your parents, especially if you're in the room and you feel like they don't support your dream, whatever it is, your career, et cetera, your decisions, just know that it is biologically programmed into their life to be that way. Like, it's super normal. If you think about it, when they're teaching you to ride a bike, they don't want to see you fall. That's why they run behind you holding onto the bike. Like, it's just a logical thing for your parents to do. So when you go to them with crazy ideas like, I'm going to quit my job and start this business, they're like, is that really the best idea? But here's what I've learned. Because I've had one job my whole life. So I taught myself how to code. I was 17, built a few companies while I was in high school on the side, kind of like side hustles. And then I finally got a job, and I didn't go to university. My dad literally just spent $3,000 in a 2-year period. I just consumed every book at Chapters. Every day, every week, I would go in. He said, as long as you read the book and you do what it's saying. So I learned every programming language, from Cold Fusion. Nobody remembers Cold Fusion. I mean, everything, right? Perl. And so I ended up getting this job working at a company, making $40,000 a year at 20 years old, which is great money in Moncton. It's great money, period, right? And what's happened is that 9 months, I couldn't do it anymore. Like, I was just like, there was something in me that felt like, if I don't get up and go, I was living in Moncton. I said, if I don't move out west, this could be like, I just feel like I'll wake up in 10 years and not have pursued kind of what I thought I could do. And I remember quitting. So I went to my boss, Russell, and I said, Russell, hey, I just want to let you know, I want to give you enough time, so I'm giving you like 6 weeks notice. He's like, ooh, what do you mean 6 weeks? I was like, I'm going to move out west and blah, blah, blah. Next day, I go into work, HR pulls me inside and said, we talked to Russell, and he mentioned that you were leaving. Unfortunately, this will be your last day. And I said, he said that? I didn't say that. What is he talking about? No. I said I was thinking. I didn't quit. And he's like, what? And I was like, no, I didn't quit. I still had a line of credit I had to pay off. I was like, I counted on those 6 weeks of income before I made the move. So anyways, reversed the decision briefly. Finished out my 6 weeks, and it was like literally the week before my last day. I didn't even tell my dad, okay? And I remember the phone call. I said, Dad, we got to talk. He's like, what's going on, right? And I go, I just quit my job. I'm moving out west. Phone goes silent. And he goes, Dan, this is the worst decision you've ever made. And I said, really? Out of everything that I've done to this point, you're going to peg the worst thing on this? And he's like, that's not funny, Dan. And I was like, Dad, I got to go. And I literally left September 9th, 2001 to drive across old Volkswagen Jetta diesels, 87, mountain bikes on the roof, just going to end up out in Vancouver. I was literally just driving across Canada trying to figure it out. And as I was halfway across, 9/11 happens, and every opportunity that I had lined up prior went literally zero. No replies, no nothing, no zero. And literally 3 months of couch surfing in Calgary. I ended up finding some friends that would let me stay at their place. Refusing to go back home. Didn't want to put my head between my legs and admit that my dad was right. Eventually got a call from a company called Syncrude that was an oil company up in Fort McMurray. And they were looking for somebody with my skill set. The company that hired me trained me on this thing called Plumtree. It was an enterprise portal software. And I didn't know this at the time, but I was one of the only certified people in Canada because it was this new technology. And Syncrude had just spent like $2 million buying licenses of this software, but they didn't have anybody to install it. And I get the call. I interview over the phone. They didn't want to hire an employee. They wanted a contractor. I call my dad. I was like, Dad, I've got this opportunity to go be a contractor. They want to know what my rate is. And my dad goes, $150 an hour. I was like, fuck you, Dad. Because I was thinking he just wants me to not get the job to move home. I remember saying, I'm not saying that. If you ever meet my dad, ask him, because he's so proud of himself. He goes, Dan, I hire consultants all the time. I pay them more than that. Don't worry about it. Anyways, next day I get on the call with the recruiter on the team, and they go, so what's your rate? And I say 150 an hour. And she goes, wow, okay. Would you do 75? And I was like, you know what? I just got to look at the finances and get back to you. Anyways, I hung up the phone. I screamed so loud. I was beyond broke, because I thought grid financial moves, close the line of credit, close the credit cards. Before I left, it's like no money. My friends were sick of me sleeping on their couches. Anyways, I ended up working in Fort McMurray. They gave me the 75 an hour, plus covered all my expenses. I'm 22. Okay. Yeah. I'd love to say again, success theater. I'm not going to give you that. I literally got my first check. It was 22 grand, and I spent it all in 3 weeks. And nobody told me anything about taxes. I flew with my brother. It was the holidays. Flew with my little brother, Mo. I can't believe we spent like 16 grand in like 8 days. I went through the whole thing, and then my dad's like, Mo told me that he had a good time with you out west. I was like, oh, we had a great time. He's like, did you save any money for taxes? Anyway, I got an accountant. I said, you take all my money, put me on salary, don't even tell me how much money I have. And 2 years later, I ended up saving my money. I literally didn't know how much I had. And this was now my third company. I'd built 2 companies prior that both failed. And after 2 years of working there, I decided to start a company called Spheric Technologies. I think at that time I had 75 grand left, because I bought a bunch of stuff a kid does, downhill mountain bikes. It was like 10 grand, made no sense. And that company, Spheric Technologies, ended up becoming, a huge company, 35 staff in a 4-year period, and I got acquired, became a multimillionaire at a young age. And it all happened because of the money I made working at Syncrude, because I moved out west. And I still remember talking to my dad and asking him, because after the company got bought, it was public in the newspaper, we got acquired by a U.S. firm. And I said, remember that conversation? He goes, yep. He never forgot, because it was almost like he was watching, waiting for me to screw up. And I said, good call? He said, I'm glad you didn't listen to me. Yeah. It was a really cool moment. It took a long time. It took like 5 years or something like that. And I share that because I just think, like, I get it. Having 2 little kids, 5 and 6, I don't want to see them hurt themselves, or 6 and 7. I don't want to see them like screw up and hurt themselves. But I also know that if you want to do anything, you got to talk to people that have been to where you want to go, right? So I always say a good mentor, because if you have a life, if your parents have a certain life, and look, you aspire to have the same life as them, great, get advice from them. But if you want to create more, which is great, I think, then you can't ask them, especially when you have the big decisions. Should I move? Should I go to university? Who should I marry? Should I get a house? You can't turn to them, because you'll end up having the same life. 90% of the people have the exact same life that their parents had. It's no wonder once you understand that. So the way I think about it is, like, if you're an athlete and you want to be, an Olympic athlete, you got to get a coach. Your parents can't teach you at that level. Doesn't mean they're bad. Doesn't mean my dad for years would criticize everything I was doing and tell me all the things I wasn't paying attention. And it's not that he was wrong. He was literally just doing what he was supposed to do. And when you can reframe it, I think it just allows you to accept it more. So for me, don't listen to your parents is said with love, although it's, I think it's a big lesson. 3, motivation trumps knowledge. So here's what I believe. I believe that it's more important to have a big why than understand the how. And I think for a lot of people like myself as a programmer, I'm a very kind of logical thinker, but I've now learned over the years that the best thing I can do is just put myself in a position to have a stronger why and motivation forward, and then I'll figure out the how. And, there's this great story, well, not great story, it's a pretty intense story, but my brother once I have a little brother, 2 little younger brothers, but my littlest was struggling in his business, and he's like, what do I do? And I said, dude, the truth is you don't want to hear what I'm going to tell you. He's like, well, no, tell me. And I said, who do you love the most other than me? It's a joke, right? He goes, my girlfriend. I said, okay, play along. It's intense. I told you I'd give you guys the real shit. I normally would not share this because it's a bit intense, but I want to give you the real stuff. if I had a gun and I put it to her head, whatever outcome you want to get 100 new clients in the next 60 days. That's because he was asking me, how do I get more customers? Yes, okay, perfect. If I put a gun to her head and you knew I was pulling the trigger in 2 weeks, there's no questions, or 60 days. In 60 days, the trigger's going off. What's the probability that you'd be able to get the 100 clients? And as soon as I said that, he said, 100%. That's the opportunity, bro. So I could sit here and tell you tactically, strategically, blah, 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 literally the internet and I've put out everything I've ever learned on YouTube for free. It's all there, literally hundreds of videos. That's not your challenge. Your challenge is you have not created a sense of urgency enough to make it a want. When I started my company, Sphere, okay, I had saved that money from working. I was excited. I hired like the 2 smartest guys I met at my first job. We started this company, and they convinced me. They're like, hey, I got my buddy Adam. He's smart. We should hire him too. Okay, so again, I had 75 grand. I figured I could hire three other people. And I met with Adam, cool dude, ripped jeans, kind of skater punk, nerd, whatever, smart guy. I was like, great, Adam, you want a job? He's like, yeah, I'll quit my job. He's making like 60 grand a year at this company. To come join me. I have no clue. I have no track record, right? I have like 2 failed companies, and here's the 3rd one. Hopefully it works out. And he quits his job. But no biggie. We're like 20. I was 24. They were like 23 or whatever. So I thought. Anyways, so I call my friend about like HR payroll stuff. He gives me some templates. I print them off. I call Andrew. Hey, I need you to sign these docs. I drive up. He gives me the address. I drive up, and it's like a house. Okay, and I thought, Andrew lives with his parents? This is weird. Knock on the door. A little girl, like 4 years old, opens the door. Hello. And I'm like, is Andrew here? And she screams, Daddy. And I was like, oh shit, he has a kid. And he runs upstairs and he opens the door and he's like, hey, Dan. And I was like, is that your daughter? He goes, yeah. And I was like, my heart, I'll never forget this. I was just like, oh shit. And then he goes, I want you to meet my wife, Jill. And he screams, hey, Jill. And she comes out of the kitchen, pregnant. I was like, Andrew, did you already quit your job, man? Like, I was so nervous. Like, Adam and Corey, they're fine. We're going to get it. Like, if I screw this thing up, they're fine. And I was like, I'll never forget up until that point, that's probably what I didn't have. I didn't have that level of intensity to want to win. And that's why I feel like I failed. When it got hard, I kind of gave up. But Adam brought a level of need for me that was not about me. It was about him and supporting him. And I think, Jason and I talked about this with their work in Haiti. Like, there's no question he's going to win because he's got 130 staff in Haiti that literally depend, and their extended family. I've met them. I went and visited the extended family that are supported from their work. So there's no option, right? And I just feel like when people want to talk to me about the strategic how-to, I get it. I get where it comes from. But I'm telling you, personally, I don't start there. I start with what's driving me to build this business. So that's number 3. Number 4 is the 5 people. Okay, you've probably heard this. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you haven't, it's pretty revolutionary. Like, wherever you're at in your life, if you want to get better, health, personal, financials, relationships, whatever aspect of your life you want to get better, just look at the people you spend time with, and I guarantee your circumstances look like theirs. Okay, it's just a really natural. We're human beings. We're community-based. And, for me, I didn't get that at first. When I was building Spheric, I literally hired a bunch of young guys. I worked at my first company, Adam, Corey, Andrew. We just worked our asses off, worked 100 hours a week. And I was like building, we were growing 150% year over year. I was like putting every dollar that I was making in profit back into the business. I had no clue about simple, really important things like cash flow. I think I met Brian earlier from BDO, like basic financial shit. I was just building this company. And 2 years into it, we were probably at $1.5 million in revenue. And I just hired 4 new people. And I'm looking at literally this is how businesses are run at scale on a spreadsheet, like it's made up spreadsheet. I don't even know if any of this made sense, but I just put numbers in the thing and I look at a bank account and that's the level of my dashboards at the time. And it clearly showed there was a deal we were supposed to get. We didn't get it. And I was looking at my runway, and essentially I had like 2 months left and where I was going to go bankrupt. And it was the end of the year, and there's two things that happened for me at the end of the year that really make you reflect on life. Number one is Christmas, right? Christmas time, family, the year, you know. Second is birthday. My birthday is December 26th. Okay, so everybody's off on the holidays. I'm the only one in the company that knows that essentially we're going to run out of money. And, you know, it's again, this year I'm looking at, you know, 2 failed companies. What's my dad going to say? I screwed up. And then New Year's Eve. Like it's like a double, it's like wham. It's like, boom, it's your birthday. How have you been doing? You're getting older. Boom, it's New Year's. How's your year been? Shit, I'm gonna lose it again. I literally went into a depression. I couldn't even operate. It was like the weight of the world was on my chest. And the only thing I could do, and it's a little embarrassing to share this with you, is I literally went in the bathtub, laid in with my head under the water and my nose above the water just to breathe. And I would lay there until the water got cold, like 2-3 hours. And I did that for like 7 days in a row. And on the last day, I decided, well, this isn't probably a healthy behavior. Don't know a whole lot about, you know, therapy and shit, but this is probably not a good idea if I keep doing this. So I'm gonna try to get some help. And out of desperation on like, I don't know, like right around the holidays, like in between New Year's and Christmas, I cold emailed, because I just asked myself, who would care if I died as a business, right? Not as a like human, yes, that's important, but like as a company, what, you know, this is where the region to me really supported me. And the only name at that point I'd ever heard of was this guy named Frank McKenna. You know, he's the premier because all of our business, Spheric Technologies, 100% of our dollars were export dollars, meaning all of our customers were Procter & Gamble, Dole Foods, Johnson & Johnson. I did all of this at 24, okay? If you never, anybody try to sell enterprise software, I don't know what the hell I was doing. I somehow made it work. And all the US dollars were coming into New Brunswick, into Moncton, and we were employing people. And I thought, I heard Frank McKenna is really, you know, he's created some great things around the economy here. He would probably care. So I just cold emailed Frank. And I said, I'm Dan Martell. I didn't even call myself an entrepreneur back then. I own a company, you know, Spheric Technologies. I made some bad decisions. I don't know how to get out of it. Is there anybody like me in this area that you think I could talk to that would be able to help me through this? Didn't think I'd ever get a reply. 45 minutes later. And this is like 1 a.m. Okay, so clearly Frank was enjoying some cocktails. Or he was on his phone in bed. Either way, whatever. And he replies, and he just gives me 3 names. And he says, he didn't, like no context. Jerry Pond, Steve Palmer, Ken Nickerson. So I didn't even ask. I grabbed their names, went on the internet, Googled Jerry Pond. You guys can Google him. Grumpiest looking dude in the world. Like, I'm like, there's no way I'm reaching out to this guy. He looks like an angry grandfather, and he's gonna bite my head off. Like, that's not gonna happen. I was desperate. I emailed him. He replied right away and said, meet me on Monday at my office. And I like roll in there and he's like, what do you do? And I tell him, and he's like, how did you do this? And I tell him, he's like, this is crazy. And he went and he got his 2 business partners and he brought them in the conference room. I think I'm an idiot. And he goes, Dan, tell them how you did what you did. Because I had this weird rule that I didn't want any employees that weren't core to building software. So everything else was distributed. My accounting team was in Sudbury. My recruiters were in Toronto. I like designed my business like software, like object-oriented programming. And he was laughing. He goes, we have 300 staff here. I don't know what half of them do. You like literally have only the people on your team that make you money and everybody else is fractional as a service. And I was just like, I just thought that's how business should work. And so then I reach out to Steve Palmer, who is the COO of a big company called Whitehill. And he goes, meet me at Tim Hortons on Sunday at 6 a.m. I was like, doesn't this guy sleep? Like I'm 26 at the time. So I wake up super early, get my suit on, wanted to be presentable, show up there. He rolls in, we sit down. Incredible mind. Like he solved my problem. He taught me a thing about the pricing strategy, like a pricing matrix, the reverse cash flow, get customers to pay up front, all normal business stuff that I just didn't know about. solved my financial problem. And I remember at the end, I said, Steve, I just got to ask you, why 6 a.m. at Tim Hortons on Mountain Road? And he goes, because if you wouldn't have said yes, I knew you weren't serious. I'm going to tell all of you, some of you are in this room, you guys have asked for help, and the person put a test up, and you failed. I do it every fucking day, because there's just too much inbound. People that are succeeding people are aware of you, and there's a bunch of influx, so you have to put these tests. So if you really want it, make sure that if they put one, not replying, that's just a test. Follow up. They say read a book. Read the book, follow up, tell them what you read. You know what I mean? And for me, the 5 people, the metaphor that I think about is a lot of times there's this great quote that we actually have it written in our house on the blackboard because we were having some challenges with our oldest. He's doing amazing now, but at the time, people are like, oh, he's got these troubles. And I'm like, it's the environment, right? And we found this great quote that I think summarizes this, is that when the flower doesn't bloom, you don't change the flower, you change the soil. Right? You change the soil, you change the community, you change the 5 people you spend the most time with, and literally your life will transform. When I got introduced to those 3 guys that became my mentors, Ken Nickerson to this day, I meet, every time I go to Toronto, we sit down. These people, literally, the reason I moved to San Francisco to build my then 4 and 5 companies was because of a conversation with Ken. Transformative, right? Who are those 5 people you're spending the most time with in your life? And finally, I want to share a quick story about being customer obsessed, okay? About one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met in my life, okay? So here's an entrepreneur, decides he wants to, start a mechanic shop. So he apprentices, he goes to school, becomes a mechanic, apprentices, and talks to the owner to eventually buy his shop. The owner was Ralph. And he worked there, and he said, hey, after my apprenticeship, I really want to do my own shop. Ralph's like, hey, you should buy my shop. I'm thinking of retiring. Sounds like a good idea. And he worked there 2 years, 3 years. Third year, he goes, hey, Ralph, I'd love to sit down and buy your shop. And at that point, he built up the shop, worked his ass off because he thought it was going to be his someday. And Ralph's like, hey, man, I feel bad, but things are doing so well, I'm not going to sell the business. And he says, fine, I quit. That guy's my brother. So he calls me up. He says, we need to talk. I was like, you never call me. This is weird. It's Thursday afternoon. So just come to my house. I go to his house. I was like, dude, what's up? He goes, I just quit my job. I said, I thought you were going to buy Ralph's. What are you talking about? He's like, well, he said he'd sell me the place, and then turns out he's going to keep it. And he goes, honestly, dude, I don't even like being a mechanic. I was like, well, fuck, that's a good thing you learned quick. You almost became a mechanic for life. He's like, yeah, I really hate sticking my head under the hood of a car and being I was like, I get it. I was like, what do you want to do now? He goes, I don't know. I was like, that's my favorite thing, right? When people are like, oh, I don't know what I want to do next. I love digging in. And I said, well, what kind of stuff, if you got into business, what do you want to do? He goes, I don't know, real estate or something? I said, well, real estate's kind of a broad market, bro. Pick something. He goes, man, I just recently helped my buddy build this house on the weekend, And I went every weekend for the last 4 weeks helping my friend build this house. And I just thought it was really cool because I wasn't just building the house, I was building the home that I knew he was going to live in, and he paid me in beer. And I was like, I like your friend, man. You got because beer is really handy, electronic, all this stuff. So he built his friend for literally free labor, my brother. But Pierre decides he wants to get in the houses. And I go, then do that. And he's like, I don't know anything about building the house. I said, dude, the coolest part about entrepreneurship is nobody knows how to succeed when they start. And it sounds funny when I say that, but I'm honestly, you ask every entrepreneur when they started a thing, they didn't know how to make it work when they started. So welcome to the club. And my brother, when I was 16, when the police were looking for me, called me to warn me. And he would have been 15 or 14 and a half. And he said, Dan, you can't come home. The police are waiting for you. Meet me at this old Coliseum area. And I showed up there, and he had a motorbike. He had a, whatever, 80cc trainer license. He shows up on his motorbike, and he gives me the only $75 he had at his time. And me and my brother weren't that close growing up, and that was like, it blew me away. And fast forward a decade, I wrote him a check for everything I had in my bank account. About 150 grand to start a home building company, because there was no bank that was going to give him the money. And I said, look, bro, people say all the time, don't get into business with your brother. And I don't give a shit, because I don't care if you win. Please don't lose my money. It'd be cool if you made some money or gave me it back someday, but like, I just want to see you like go for it, because I just felt really blessed at that point in my life and career to even be in that position. And he went off and he started building houses. My brother had this really smart strategy. He's like, I'm going to win because I'm going to build the cheapest house out there. I'm not going to work with real estate agents because why do you pay anything to them? It's stupid. They're not doing any work. I'll sell the houses directly and I'll just make money, cash. I was like, sounds like a great idea. Go for it. So I went back to work, doing stuff. He started building, bought materials. And like 6 months later, he calls me up and he's like, we need to talk. I was like, that does not sound like an exciting we need to talk. He goes, just meet me at my house. And I was like, okay. I park in his backyard. He had like kind of like a flat, like in one floor house. And I go through the back into his kitchen. And I look around, there's nothing in his kitchen. It's empty. No kitchen table. I could see the living room across. Nothing in the living room. I like walk in. I was like, Pierre, you here? He's like, yeah, I'm in my office. And I walk through the living room. And there's like emptied. I said, dude, did somebody break into your house? And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. Well, that's weird. Walk down the hallway, 3 bedrooms. I look into his bedroom, nothing except an air mattress and some like a sleeping bag. And I could see him at the end of the hallway. And I look in his room and I'm like, dude, where's all your shit? And that's when I took this photo. And he told me not to post it on the internet. Because I was like, dude, you're so fucking skinny. Like, you got to meet my brother today. If you saw my brother today, you'd be like, he's definitely doing steroids. Because I was like, what's going on? And he was literally working full-time building houses, full-time trying to sell houses. Turned out that he built what is called in the industry. So my brother thought he was going to compete on price. Brilliant idea, right? Not so much. Anybody in business knows you don't want to be the Walmart of whatever you're selling. And he built what was called a house with no curb appeal. This is what it looked like. I feel bad because I did this talk in my hometown and some little girl's like, I live in that house. And I was like, I apologize. If you drive down the street, you will literally see these 2 duplexes. Because they were like, he built 4 units with the money I gave him. And he couldn't sell them because he just went cheap on everything. He thought, I'm going to sell to some dude. And I was like, oh shit. So he maxed out his line of credit, remortgaged his house, and he was talking to a real estate agent friend, and she said, you probably have a better chance if you staged the house. He took everything from his own house and moved it into the model home. And I was just like, that was the moment I knew this guy's going to win. And he was definitely not in the conversation mood to have that with him, but I was like, fuck, I'm excited for him. He's like, this makes no sense. Why are you so excited? I said, we're going to fix the problem. So first thing I do is I called my little brother, Mo, and I said, Mo, congratulations, you're now a homeowner. And he's like, what? I was like, I'm giving you $5,000 for the deposit. You're approved for the bank. You now own one of Pierre's duplexes. And he's like, what? Does this make sense? I go, trust me. You trust me? He's like, I don't know. Should I try? I was like, you're paying rent right now. You might as well own the house you live in. Pierre just gave you a good deal. He sold it for like $112,000. We needed to just move it. He had to sell this shit. So we got Mo in there. I gave him the deposit. And it was a legit good deal. I wasn't taking advantage of the situation. This is all true. Talk to my family. It's hilarious. But, and they just kept, we sold the second one and the third one. And I didn't know anything about building houses. I'm a software guy. But I just knew there were some principles. And one of them was become customer obsessed, work backwards from your customers. I've never pretended I'm a smart software guy. I just am really good at listening to what the customer's asking me for and being quick to build it and showing it to them. And so I said, Pierre, let's do this. Let's just do let's grab who's your ideal customer. Because he realized, this is what he figured out. The men he thought he was going to sell his houses to I don't know any of the men in the room have ever bought houses with their partners. Like, it doesn't matter how good of a deal that house is. If it looks like that, you ain't buying it. Like, it's that simple. Like we think we're in control, we don't make the decision. So I said, get your ideal customer, first-time home buyers, female, and get them together on like a Sunday and go look at all the open houses and have them take photos of what they like about the houses, the kitchens, the layouts, like all this stuff I've learned since, bathrooms and all this stuff. Anyways, and at the end of the day, get them drunk, right? Because you got to reward them for all this time. And have them sit down with your architect, now that we've sold one of the places to Mo and we'll sell the rest of them, and design what the market wants. And they sat down and they co-created the house that ended up being literally the perfect price point, first-time home buyer house. And he went from literally almost going bankrupt, losing all my money, to selling 16 houses in a 12-month period. And that went from 16 to 38, I think, year 2, to 50-some. He's now the largest home builder in Eastern Canada, hundreds of homes, a developer. I mean, he's been at it. Pierre is, I say this, and it's not because of my brother. I know I'm totally biased. I'm telling you, like, he is one of the best operators, determined, just going to make it work kind of guys. And when I say customer obsessed, I think that in life, if we just work backwards from our customers, it's hard to be wrong. And like, he took it to another level though, okay? He realized so much that his customer was female, that this was his slogan at the first home show he did. Okay? Literally, people, I was there, I watched it, I just was blown away. They walk by, husband and wife, and she would just nudge her husband and listen, those guys, we're not buying a house, but I like those guys, They know what they're talking about. I mean, just nonstop, like, about, what the women wanted, and they kept designing houses. I mean, this one, so where's my contractor? This was the feedback they got from everybody that said, I built a house, and the worst part is I had no clue where my contractor was. I couldn't get a hold of him. He said, fuck it, we'll make it easy. Google Maps, real time, all of his trucks in his fleet, there's no way the contractor could hide. Okay, if you were trying to take somebody out, you knew exactly where they were. So that solved the problem. He realized that for a lot of homeowners, buying a house was the biggest financial decision they'll ever make in their life, and he wanted to honor it and celebrate it. So he said, how do I make this more fun? And he gave everybody not a bottle of wine and a basket of fruit like most realtors do on a closing. He got them 2 tickets to jump out of a plane. He's so smart, though. This is the key. He knew most people wouldn't redeem it, so he only paid if somebody redeemed it. So he gave hundreds of these away. May have only had to pay for 4. But the word of mouth, right? And then this is my crazy idea. Where I was in San Francisco, and I saw it wasn't even Lyft. It was before Lyft, but there was these pink mustaches on the front of cars. And I said, Pierre, I got this crazy marketing idea. He's like, what's that? I said, you need to put these pink furry mustaches on the front of your trucks. And he goes, I love you, brother. You've helped me out. He said, there's no fucking way I'm putting a pink mustache on them. He goes, you do not understand the kind of people we work with. Like, not only would they ridicule me, I could have bodily harm. Like, this is not a good idea. And I said, but this is so good. Let me get back to you. Literally the next day, I came up with the idea. I said, you know that women are your core customer, and you do the run for the cure anyways. They were already supporting this program. I said, just make it as a charity thing for a week. And they ended up having a photo of the homepage of the newspaper, all of his trucks lined up on Main Street with big pink mustaches being celebrated for their work. I mean, he was hilarious. He did... He knew that his customers, for the most part, worked in call centers. Moncton has a big call center thing. So he had this great slogan, or this workshop. The call centers would call him to bring him in to do a sales pitch at lunch, because he called it Quit Making Your Landlord Rich. Because if you're an employer, you want to make sure people have, if they bought a house, they were more stable, there was less churn. And he ended up going to all the call centers, do these lunch and learns, essentially just selling the dream. And that is it. I just want to thank you guys for having me tonight. It's a real honor. Jason, Brenda, appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. Do we have time? Cool. Yeah, I guess we're doing Q&A. If you have any questions, as you can see, we can go all over the place. I'm not shy. You could just scream it out from your chair.
Why do you think so many entrepreneurs have ADD?
And your name?
Andrew.
Hey, Andrew. That's a great question. So,
Like 6 months ago.
yeah, it's one of the most popular videos on my YouTube channel. It's probably, and I think I put out a lot of great content, but then somehow I do this video on just ADHD because it's like been part of my reality. And here's what I've discovered. It's not just ADHD. I've discovered that most entrepreneurs, when I'm speaking to like pure founders, I ask people like, right? I'm going to talk about that, chaos. Most founders, like that could have really messed somebody up. So this is good. But this is just a more example of no pressure, no diamonds. Okay? Because what I've discovered, if you ask a room of entrepreneurs, if they had anything chaotic happen in their lives between the ages of 9 and 13, 70-80% of the room's hands will go up. For me, it was obviously my story, but for other people, it could be a death of their parent or they were adopted or whatever. And here's what I've discovered is that if you've learned at that age to deal with chaos in your life, that when it comes to the entrepreneurial world, you have a disadvantage. You have an advantage. Does that make sense? Like all of a sudden now, where I had a disadvantage, I was totally disadvantaged at work. I couldn't work. Like I had to quit because I was going to get fired anyways. I just couldn't shut up. I had too many opinions, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, honestly, if there was an entrepreneur in the world, I would probably be in trouble because like I needed an outlet. And so that's what I've discovered is that most people that have ADHD or went through trauma or chaos or whatever, they're really good and comfortable with uncertainty. Think about that. Entrepreneurship at its core is being totally comfortable with shit dropping from the ceiling. Literally, for most people that are sitting over there, they might go, oh my God, I'm gonna hit my thing. And like, I could have hurt myself. And entrepreneurs are like, it wouldn't even like, I'm on to the next thing. Like, it's not even interesting, right? So that is, from my perspective, what I've discovered. I do a lot of work with at-risk youth. It's a big part of my life. And I tell them all, I'm like, you guys are so skilled and ready to just rip it up in business because you've learned all the skills. You guys are risk takers. You're good negotiators, telling stories, lying to the, like they're just so good. They just don't know. They're amazing. So, I think it's just, you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Chaos is where you thrive. You want to hear something crazy? And the entrepreneurs in the room, when things are going good, you know what we do? We fucking lob hand grenades into our businesses. Because we don't know what that's normal and like everything's working. What's going on? Change the website, change the business model, hire this. It's what we do. It's so I coach a lot of founders, so I see them do this. So it's just good to understand is that smart entrepreneurs that succeed, they're smart enough to get the right people around them to protect the rest of the company from them. It's true. It's just true. But that's why I think ADHD is definitely prominent. But I think most any challenges they face is what gave them it's almost like that's the only place that they're going to win because they need that to kind of just be who they are. Great question. Thanks for that. Yeah. Hey, Andy.
Oh, balance in your life. So I know your wife is an entrepreneur as well.
Amazing.
You got 2 young kids.
Yeah.
Myself, I've got 3 young kids. Business is growing, still 110 people, and doing all the things I want to do in life. There's not enough hours, and you got to get kind of right center. I struggle with it every day, all day.
Yeah, well, here's, looking back 20 years, building companies, exiting, coaching. Now I've coached, like personally in the businesses, hundreds of entrepreneurs. I've got one of the largest coaching practices in the world for B2B SaaS, very niche focused. What I've discovered is a lot of it's self-inflicted. And what I mean by that is most entrepreneurs cause pain in their lives from indigestion, not starvation, meaning that they think that there's a lack of opportunity, and the reality is that they're doing too many things, right? So most companies don't fail because of starvation. They fail because of indigestion, meaning they were doing too many things. So one, I would just really audit your time. So when I work with founders, I call it a time study. Every 2 weeks, every 15 minutes, they log what they're doing, and I'm not going to go through the whole process, but you can Google it on my YouTube channel, and you look at what's tactical and what's strategic, and you got to get rid of the tactical stuff and focus on strategic. Most entrepreneurs, I literally to this day, having worked with an assistant now for years, I almost think that that's the first hire, because they will give you so much more leverage for that investment, but most first-time founders won't give themselves permission to have that support person. And call them an admin, call them an office manager, call them chief of staff, call them whatever. Literally just call them like co-founder. It's somebody that's just working on the things that are known so that you can go work on the things that are unknown, because that's where your value add is. Does that make sense, Andy? So if you did those two things, one, audit your time and actually got rid of the shit that it's just a waste and you know you shouldn't be doing, and then two, gave yourself permission to take, 50 grand, 60 grand and hire somebody to support you at that level and take care of the scheduling. So my rule is the calendar and the email. So if you delegate your calendar and email, which sounds crazy, it's a beautiful thing. It's like, I don't know how to live my life. I joke to my team, I'm the talent, they tell me where to go. And my assistant could literally be like, you have a meeting at the edge of town and jump off the cliff. And I'd be like, oh, it's in my calendar. Woo! Like, it's just gotten there, because I don't want to spend any time thinking about that. I want to be present with my kids or work on really meaningful stuff. That's literally where you want to get to. And once you experience it, you won't ever go back. And those are literally, that's life hack for having a more integrated life. And even my wife has the same thing. And this is even nerdier. The assistants talk to each other because they know more about what we're doing. So we get to talk about like us, not things that we don't need to know, like when's the flight, or did you book the thing, or blah blah blah. It sounds bougie, I get it, okay, I get it. But if you've got a team of people and you're spending 150 grand for an engineer, I would argue that there might be better ROI spent somewhere else, because you as the founder probably will get the highest value creation score of an hour invested doing something than, the joke is if you don't have an admin, you are the admin, right? You're doing the $10 task. Right? It's like my dad's like, I like mowing my own lawn. I said, no, you don't. I do. I said, well, then mow the neighbor's lawn. You don't like mowing lawns that much if you're not offering the neighbor to mow their lawn. He just shut up. He's like, fuck, he got me. God. But it's true. And I just think that that's really, if you look at what business is about, it's just about like trying to create more space to create more leverage. Great question though, Andy. Thanks for that. Cool. Yeah, name and question. It's a great question. I think that's the biggest challenge of entrepreneurs is I really think sequencing equals success. So like choosing what you do in what order to kind of get to an outcome. The big thing I would ask you, Nick, if we were talking one-on-one, would be like, what's the wrong you want to right in the world that could be the overarching why? And that, if you can figure out that, and that's the gift. Like I know my why. I know why I'm here on earth, and I get that that's a unique thing. I learned it at 17. Okay, my why is to help youth not go through the pain that I went through. That's why I wake up every day. The software is just a vehicle to do more of that. Literally, my clients pay me a lot of money for me to help them make more money so I can take that money and help more kids. You know what I mean? And that's such a powerful why that everything else that supports that is just part of the mix. So I would just say if you could find an overarching mission that it's a theme that you can see where all your projects fit into that. Because like the truth is, and Steve Jobs said it, is like you can't connect the dots until you look back. Right? But we can decide what is our North Star? What are we aiming towards? And as long as we're better this week than we were last week, and we're making forward movement towards the North Star, I think we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. Because that's really what life's about. It's just literally betterment every day. Am I better? Does that help, Nate? Cool. Great questions. Any other questions? Cool. We'll do last question, and then I think there's food. Stephanie, I don't know if I was supposed to say that. Yeah, I'm excited. Your name? Hey, Quentin. Did you wear a suit to come here tonight? I love that. That was amazing. There's a lot, dude. I mean, this is like, and it's all contextual. The fact that you asked me that question, I'll give you my cell phone. Not even joking. And you can call me anytime. Yeah. How's that? Yeah, 6 a.m. Whenever you need me. Anyways, thanks again for having me, guys.
Well, thank you, Dan Martell. That was really amazing. Really personal stories. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Michael Bleemel. I'm the Dean at the Faculty of Business and IT. Really big into information technology and software as a service and all that other stuff. So we're just up the street on not too far. I proudly live in Whitby in Durham region now, and really excited to see this space here concentrating so many interesting ideas and opportunities for the next generation of businesses here, especially around my favorite space, the IT space. I just wanted to think I'd add a little insight to what the difference is between the academics and entrepreneurs. So academics, they'll change 3 things instead of changing 1 thing when they're throwing their grenade into their experiment. That way, they'll never be sure whether it was the first, the second, or the third thing, and they'll have papers for the rest of their life. Okay? But entrepreneurs, their job is to take risk out of things. They own the risk. Their job is to ask questions, talk to people, find the answer to what's unknown, and usually by changing 1 thing at a time. And talking to people and sharing, I think that's something we can do over some food. And so I'd like to thank you again for this, and invite everybody for some drinks and some food outside.